Okay, if you've been following the videos to this step, you've got the marker basically back together. I didn't put the regulator back on in the last portion, so I'll do that now. One thing you're going to want to do when you put the regulator back on, once you got to the spot where you kind of had everything preset, is make sure that no matter what macro line fitting you're using, it snaps in well. And that's not in. Now it's in. Make sure that that snaps in properly. Also, when you first screw your tank in, those of you that are not coming from the pump world, especially not the sniper pump world or cocker pump world, you have to pump the marker the first time or that valve will just be open. So screw in your tank. Hey, it's sealed. I almost did it right. It's almost like I know what I'm doing. And there sits the marker set up, ready to fire. Okay? Now, with that said, when you're adjusting the velocity on this marker, from here on out, adjust it simply through the back tube. You know the regulator is correct. You've set it at the pressure that you know is right, 300 to 350, right? Again, 350 is default. Set it to 350, and then use your IVG, inner velocity governor, to turn up or down whatever you need on this marker, okay? But the thing we haven't checked yet is the timing. Now what we mean by timing is when the marker will fire in auto trigger. What you don't want is the marker to fire too early, because as you can see by looking down, the marker would fire at this point. There's still plenty of gap to let air out. The bolt is not matching up with the transfer hole, and you're wasting a ton of air. It'll get chuffy on you, and your velocity will drop in auto trigger. You also don't want it to drop to fire so late that you can't get it to fire. If you set the auto trigger too long, in this case, it just will never fire. You can single fire it, but you can't get it to fire in auto trigger. So you need to adjust the lug depth, the hammer lug depth, in order to adjust the auto trigger release point. Now what I just did is I took the bolt out and I'm going to put the pin back in. What that lets you do is pump the marker without having the bolt in the way. If the bolt's in the way, you can't get to that 1/8 inch screw that's right here. Okay? That's what drops the lug, causes the auto trigger to fire later in the stroke, or raises the lug and causes the auto trigger to fire earlier in the stroke. If you start this process out and it won't cock at all, your lug is entirely too low, okay? So you need to adjust that. If it won't auto trigger at all, it's entirely too high, and you need to adjust that. That's why you saw me in the earlier videos counting how many screws, how many times I turn my Allen key at this point to get the hammer out. I want it to be close because I don't want to mess with this and have it just so so vague that I don't know what I'm doing. So let's check the auto trigger with how I set it back up. And I haven't touched this since then. I'll just auto trigger the marker slowly. And what I want to have happen is for this marker to fire with a 1/8 inch gap, the gap of your Allen key tool, okay, right before it closes. That's proper. And it fired late. Not crazy late, it still did fire, but it fired late at about 1/32 or something. Okay, so what I need to do, because it's firing late, is raise the lug up so that it fires a little earlier. If it's firing at this point, drop the lug down. You know, righty-tighty, turn it down, okay? If it's firing late, raise it up. Let's see how that little bit of adjustment did. That's about perfect, man. Yep, I'm gonna drop that just a little bit because I'm anal. Little dab will do you there. So now I know that this thing is set up properly in auto trigger. Now, one old school trick is, you see how the hole on the bottom here, that hole on the bottom attaches to or connects to the air transfer tube. Air comes in here, hits your valve, is stopped until the hammer hits it, lets air go through the valve. This is clear in the manuals that I wrote, and I'll link those right now. Comes through the valve, through the bolt hole, which is down like this, but I'm showing you on the side, and then pushes the paintball out, forces the paintball out the barrel. You can put this in upside down all day long if you want. It's not pretty, it's not easy to do, but when you fire this marker, there is no air transfer, and you'll get like 15, feet per second. It's a great thing to do to your friends that don't know the trick. Turn their bolt upside down, okay? I didn't tell you to do that. Don't tell on TF. But that auto trigger is set up just about right. I know the velocity is close because I've got the IVG set up correctly, and I've got the pressure coming in. So I'd go to a chrono at this point, grab a handful of well-rounded paintballs, match it to my barrel, and I'd go ahead and chrono in at that point, turning up or down just using the internal velocity governor. Don't mess with the reg. Something has to be very wrong for the regulator to be really causing trouble, okay? Especially if everything was right before you cleaned it, okay? Something might be wrong with your setting of pressure. Double check that. But for the most part, once you set it, you leave it alone. Set it and forget it is what I say. Now let me finish setting my marker up so I can answer some questions of what I personally run. And trust me, this doesn't matter, okay? You run what you are comfortable with. I run a Deadly Wind barrel. 14-inch, I'm used to 14-inch, that's just what I like. And Deadly Wind barrels take inserts. In this case, I've got stainless steel freak inserts in here. Stainless steel is not necessary. You can pick up aluminum ones, quite a bit cheaper, and put it together. Deadly Wind is a local Houston boy. His name's Colin. Great guy, runs a great business, does everything out of his own house or apartment, and just really is great with his quality control and customer service. I've owned 3, 4, 5 of these barrels over time and have never had an issue with them. Super light, run them for years. That's what I run. You, again, run what you want to run. Okay? That screws in. Notice I put a little bit of O-ring on there. That's just to hold it so I don't have to over-tighten it. I like to line the logo up. Again, anal. I'm sure you're noticing that. Now, what do I run for hopper? I run either this in stock class configuration, which is always fun, which I'll show you a little bit more on the Series 6.5 breakdown video, or I run a sport shot. Sometimes I'll run a Winchester, but that's rare. CCM does make a Winchester adapter feed neck, which is pretty cool, but I run the sport shot. Now this is an old sport shot. This is one that I modified myself. However, they are being sold again. Thank you, Simon, from Empire Paintball. This is an old one. He said it's completely worn off. I had to Dremel out the inside. I used to sell these Dremeled out, and then Simon took a lot of my modifications, put his own magic and juju in there, and really took care of business. You don't have to worry about any of that now. It's just plug and play. Put it on your gun and go. Most people run the lids. Lids are just fine. Down here where it's pretty warm, I don't have to worry about it raining on my paint very often, although I do keep the lid in the bag. I'll run a speed feed. And you can do whatever speed feed you want. This is an Exalt speed feed. Okay, sold by the same people that make Hater sauce and Hater marmalade. Not sponsored by them, but that's what I run. You do have to modify your sport shot by taking the little lip off of there. Just use a Dremel tool or some sandpaper. But then that goes on, pretty much stays on, and that's just what I run. That's what I enjoy running. Tank-wise, I run a Crossfire, sponsored by them for years. This is their newest regulator. Why? It's just what I'm used to. I run low pressure on every CCM marker, except for the SS25 and Series 6 prototype. Why? You only need 450 in, you're regulating it down to 300. There's no reason to make that regulator work more than it should. You are running the CCM SS25 and the Series 6 prototype a little bit higher pressure, so I'll run a high pressure. You don't need to change it. I wouldn't even worry about it. If you had one tank, you're fine. I've got a couple, so that's what I run. I run a No Pro feed neck on the marker here. Your choice. You run what you want. Some people like a larger ball stack. I like to keep that as low as possible. Okay? So one last thing when you're setting it up and you're getting ready to go for the day. When I'm getting ready to head out, and I've got the marker teched at this point, okay, I run a little tri-flow here on the bolt. Usually just one drop, okay? Little drop here, and I've set it up on the inside on that trigger. I might even put a drop here, a little dab, not much, and on the other side on that arm. Just so that everything is running smoothly, okay? Now, I always wipe off the excess. You do not want to attract dirt. There's no reason to do it. But as you can see, the marker actually cocks itself. It's that smooth. All chip bleeds can be that smooth with a little bit of polishing the hammer, the sear, and the arms in this pump guide rod can be just as smooth as you want it to be. So that's what I do. That's what I run. If I'm going to run a marker that's this expensive, I want it to run to its optimal performance level. That's just what I'm going to do. But that's the marker put back together. That's how I set it up. That's how to chronograph it. That should be it for the T2. If you've got any questions, post them up on Facebook, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks a lot.